What up, Cucks? It's your boy, the Hater, and it's time for a late but commercial-less for your boy, Raw review. All right. As usual, this Raw was complete garbage, and as usual, we're going to go over it segment by segment. All right, let's get to it. First up, they show Gunther coming in, and he watches, not American Alpha, whatever, the Otis and Tozawa, I never got the names right, and Maxine doing like a TikTok dance while they're filming themselves, which is unacceptable. He shakes his head. This becomes relevant later on. Then, when the show actually starts, Logan comes out, Logan Paul, and he's charismatic. It's undeniable. In the middle of his speech, which he's doing a really good job getting the crowd to hate him even more than usual, CM Douche comes out and is upset that Logan talks shit about him, right? Despite the fact that he interrupted Logan Paul, right? This is just unacceptable logic and horrible booking. CM Punk then says Logan is a dime a dozen, which is obviously not true, right? CM Punk basically puts forward the idea that Logan is just like everybody else who's just like a kid who's trying to get attention. Number one, he like invented that, you know what I mean? So he's not a dime a dozen, and also he's like 100 times a better athlete than CM Punk, you know what I mean? It's inexcusable how much better Logan Paul, a random YouTuber, is than actual wrestlers, Nobody would ever think back in the day that Logan Paul would have a chance to beat someone like Kane or Brock Lesnar or Mark Henry or even someone like Booker T, who's like a regular-sized dude by back days standards, right? You would never think that, like, this guy has a chance to beat Farouk or JBL or, Bubba Ray Dudley or Devon. Like, you wouldn't think that, because even if he could, which he probably could, most of those guys, right? The reality is, they looked the part, right? Like, probably Logan Paul would beat up Batista. You know what I'm saying? Like, maybe not in his prime, because Batista was jacked in his prime, but in his, like, quasi-prime, probably Logan Paul would beat his ass, because Batista, as we saw, can't really fight, right? When we saw his MMA debut. But, like, no chance he's going to beat up Kane, right? And even so, all those guys look like they can beat up Logan Paul. CM Punk looks like he can't beat up anybody, which is probably true. But then basically, Logan Paul just buries him on the mic, speaking facts, right? He says that all CM Punk has done is fail. You know what I mean? He just goes everywhere and fails, which is the opposite of Logan Paul, which is characterized by the fact that Logan Paul goes somewhere, succeeds, blows like the expectations out of the water. You know what I mean? It honestly is legitimately incredible what Logan Paul has done. Even his movement up the card, right? He came in as the Miz's like bullshit tag team partner as a celebrity who had an impressive WrestleMania match. Now he's like effectively a quasi main eventer, and the Miz is an undercard jobber. Now that's not fair. We all know how I feel about the Miz, but facts are facts, right? Nobody would have ever thought that Logan Paul was going to be a main eventer when he debuted. Ever. You never thought that. And not only a main eventer, but a serious one. One that can wrestle, that can hold his own, Anyways, CM Punk basically says he will eliminate Logan Paul. Logan slaps him and runs out of the ring. Now, one thing that I want to talk about with respect to CM Punk is the following, right? CM Punk, for better or for worse, has a good chance of winning the Elimination Chamber, right? Because this storyline could be CM Punk versus Cucky Rhodes. Cucky takes the deal, and then it looks like Cucky and The Rock are about to destroy CM Punk. Roman Reigns comes in, right? Spears them both because CM Punk has called in his favor with Heyman, right? They could go that route, Haven't heard anyone come up with that theory yet. The haters first, as usual. Anyways, but hopefully John Cena just wins and we don't have to worry about any of this bullshit. The fact that they had this segment would indicate to me that one is going to eliminate the other. Probably CM Punk is going to eliminate Logan Paul, and then Logan Paul is going to, like, post-elimination attack him, you know what I mean, before he gets escorted out, leading to, like, one of the other heels, doing their finisher and pinning CM Punk, you know what I mean? Like, that's probably what's going to happen. But anyways, it could go one of multiple ways. Then we go to commercial, we come back, we got a triple threat match, right? It's Pete Dunne and Ludwig Kaiser, who haven't won a match, like, probably in the last 3 years. Ludwig definitely hasn't. Pete Dunne, like, I think he beat Trick Williams a few, like, months ago, and that's basically it. Like, these are people that are just dead in the water, including Trick Williams, But anyways, who lost to, like, Eddie Thorpe. I mean, come on. But anyways, well, I actually kind of like Eddie Thorpe. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. Anyways, we move forward. The match is decent. All these guys are athletic enough. They can do what needs to be done. The match basically ends with Penta going for the Penta driver on Pete Dunne, who obviously was going to take the pin. Ludwig Kaiser just throws Penta out like a piece of trash and then hits the compass rose, or whatever the fuck he calls it, on Pete Dunne and pins him, right? Then Michael Cole and Pat McAfee start telling us how this is going to be the turning point for Ludwig Kaiser. He had a breakout year in 2024. He didn't win one match in 2024. What are you talking about? I'm tired of these wrestlers who suck. They're presented as jobbers, but then Michael Cole and Pat McAfee like gaslight us into believing that these guys are like somehow good or at least better than they are. You hear this a lot with B-Fab, right? B-Fab has lost literally every match she's ever had in her life. And like Michael Cole or whoever, Wade Barrett and the other guy on SmackDown keep saying like, oh, you know, even though B-Fab like lost last week, she turned a lot of heads. No, she didn't. Nobody cares about her. Nobody cares about Trick Williams. Nobody cares about Ludwig Kaiser. These people are not entertaining. You know what I mean? And I will say, for what this was, it was decent, right? Because nobody would have expected Ludwig Kaiser to finally win a match for the first time in 3 years. But here we are. Then we have a dumbass segment with Rhea Ripley in this new format where they have the interview like by the fans. It's really dumb. I pretty much skipped it. Rhea Ripley wrestles once every 3 months, right? But as I skipped it, Io Sky came out, so I knew she wasn't going to say anything because she doesn't speak the language. But I'm sure she did. She tried, and basically we're reminded that they're going to wrestle each other next Monday, which is after the pay-per-view. How about just have the match at the pay-per-view? You know what I mean? Or how about have it today? You know, they're not doing anything. It's not like Rhea Ripley's doing anything with her life. She's 28. You know what I mean? Rhea Ripley is like in her 20s. She should be wrestling every week. But this is the path they've chosen, and this is the path we must continue walking. Next up, the New Day come out to their very, very mid theme song. The theme song, if this was like their first theme song, it would be pretty nice. But you expect something far more epic for like one of the best heel turns in recent memory. But anyways, it's them. And it's going to be them versus LWO, which, of course, in this permutation is made up of Cruz del Toro and Joaquin Wilde, meaning that there is an absolute zero chance, zero Kelvin chance, right? Zero chance that Joaquin Wilde and Cruz del Toro are going to have their first victory on TV in the last like 5 years today, right? And that's exactly what happens. The New Day win with like a variant of the up, down, down, you know? I think they were going for a different move, but then Kofi just called an audible because he couldn't lift the guy, I think. But anyways, it was what it was. Dragon Lee comes out, and he gets his ass beat, and gets a botchy, like, shield powerbomb, basically, but like a double powerbomb from the New Day, right? The powerbomb almost failed, but Dragon Lee, he was actually one of my prospects in the indies because I thought he was really good, and now they've pretty much ruined him completely, you know? And I'm not saying they ruined him like they misused him. Like, you can't do anything with Dragon Lee, you know what I mean? He's just another luchador. He has no personality. But he should have been, he's one of those few guys that should have stayed in the indies where he actually could have some good matches and get some time for exposure. Then we move backstage. We got Judgment Day in like, you know, this week's, you know, obligatory Judgment Day segment, right? There's always like every episode of Raw, there's a Judgment Day backstage segment, and every episode of SmackDown, there's a Bianca Belair and Naomi or Bianca Belair and Jade Cargill segment back in the day where they don't do anything. Same thing here, nothing happens, right? They're just fighting with each other, and that's basically it. Eventually, Liv and Raquel come out and they say they're going to win the titles, which is like basically all Judgment Day does is talk about how they're going to win titles, and then they lose everything, and then once in a while they win, and that's the entire point of the faction. It's completely different than the one that Edge started, which was actually a good faction. This is a complete waste of time. You know, everyone in Judgment Day, except for Liv Morgan and Dominic, should be released tomorrow. You know what I mean? But that's what we get. Then Gunther comes out, cuts a promo. I got bored. I had to skip it. I'm sorry. I don't have time to decipher the bullshit that Gunther's going to say. This guy, even though he speaks perfectly good English, he just delivers promos very poorly. He's very, very boring. You know what I mean? And I don't want to hear anybody say otherwise. You know, I'm tired of this, like, of this made-up nonsense, this gargantuan lie that Gunther is good at this job. He's not. Then Tozawa comes out, and Gunther basically says he wants to beat him up because Tozawa was doing a TikTok dance earlier, right? In the beginning of the show that I mentioned. Basically, Gunther says, look, Tozawa, me and you have a lot of things in common. And then Gunther speaks some half facts. Basically, Gunther says, look, you know, like you're a dancing fool and you should be worried about winning, right? which in kayfabe makes sense, but in reality, it doesn't. Because Tozawa, in my opinion, is the best Japanese wrestler that we've had in WWE since Tajiri. And I don't even think it's close. You know what I mean? Tozawa is 100 times more entertaining. Despite the fact that his gimmick is being a dumbass, right, and doing the ruffle shuffle, his gimmick is still, his shtick, if you will, is still 100 times more entertaining than Io Sky and Nakamura, who, in my opinion, shouldn't be in this company at all. At least Tozawa tries to make us feel entertained. Nakamura comes out dancing like Michael Jackson, and because people have never seen a Japanese person dance, I guess, I don't know what the draw is. They're like, wow, he's so charismatic. He's just copying Michael Jackson. Poorly, might I add. He's not even good at it. You know, it's just almost embarrassing. He just comes out trying to dance like Michael Jackson, being cringe about it, and then going, yeah, and then, the rest is history. But anyways, Gunther basically says that Tozawa sucks, and then he starts whooping his ass, right? This match, in my opinion, started off as a good match. This was one of my favorite Gunther matches of all time because it was actually entertaining. A story was being told here, right? That Tozawa has basically virtually no chance. But there were flashes of moments where you think, oh, maybe he might get a super, super upset. Almost certainly 0% chance because we're too close to the pay-per-view and frankly too close to WrestleMania for Gunther to take any losses. But nevertheless, eventually the match got boring because it went on too long. We all know it's a squash match. Just squash the guy. Tozawa did 3 or 4 counters before eventually Gunther puts him in the sleeper hold, makes his ass pass out. Gunther keeps the sleeper hold on. Otis comes in. Gunther runs like a coward, comes back. Sleepers Otis, right? Then eventually Jey Uso comes and Gunther runs away, right? Classic, pre-pay-per-view situation, but nothing came of it, right? And quite frankly, Jey Uso, just because he won the Rumble, doesn't erase the fact that he's a mid-card nobody. And as far as I'm concerned, as a mid-card nobody, he needs to start wrestling every week again, right? I understand that there's a lot of mid-card nobodies like Gunther, but at least on the record, Gunther wrestled tonight, or last night, I should say. But even so, I mean, if we're being honest, right? Even if you count this as a wrestling match, which you should, because he did do his moves, this is the first match Gunther's had on Raw in a month. So I'm not really impressed by him either. Speaking of unimpressive douchebags, we next up have Lyra Valkyria versus Dakota Kai in this week's Who Gives a Rat's Ass match, right? This match, I couldn't care less about this. Nobody cares about any of these broads. Lyra Valkyria is the most vanilla wrestler of all time. I don't think there has been a woman or a man in this industry to achieve as much as Lyra Valkyria has achieved without having any personality. You could say what you want, but at the very least, if you take Julia from NXT, she at least emotes a little bit. She's at least, there's something there. She's interesting looking. You know what I mean? You don't see people like that walking around too much. Lyra Valkyria is just a random normal girl who comes out there and wrestles, and she's has a fighting spirit and thinks she's a Valkyrie. I don't know, and I don't care. You know what I mean? After the match, Ivy Nile comes and attacks her in this meaningless Intercontinental Women's title feud. Now, I will say this. The hater's not stupid. The hater sees what's going on. And what's going on is Rhea Ripley refuses to wrestle, and as does the SmackDown women champion, which, I mean, now it's Tiffany Stratton. Before it was Nia. Actually, Nia wrestled quite a lot, but Tiffany Stratton doesn't really wrestle much, or she definitely won't in the coming months. If Charlotte wins, she's not wrestling ever. She's gonna have a Rhea Ripley schedule once every 7 weeks. You might see her have a match, right? But so as a result, they've introduced these BS titles to kind of make Raw and SmackDown feel more legitimate, right? Because now you're oh, Ivy Nile is going after the Intercontinental title. I don't care at all who Ivy Nile is going after. They act as if the main event, the upper card of the women's division, if you will, they act like it's this stacked thing. So now Ivy Nile has to go for the lower level, for the Intercontinental title. It's have you seen the Elimination Chamber match? It's Naomi, Alexa Bliss, who hasn't wrestled in years. It's a bunch of jobbers there too, But whatever. As I said, Lyra Valkyria wins, and it's going to be her versus Ivy Nile. Hopefully, Ivy Nile can just win the title so we can, get rid of Lyra Valkyria, and also so we can end this, ridiculous storyline of Ivy Nile chasing this meaningless title. It's really dumb. Then we get a Sami Zayn interview, which obviously I skipped in its entirety. You know what I'm saying? I said I'm not covering the storyline at all, and I refuse. I refuse on principle to watch this. There is nothing that Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens can do that will ever entertain me. You know what I mean? The match, I'm skipping that too. On Saturday. Now, if I hear it's like the best match of all time and someone like breaks their neck or something, grotesque happens, then yeah, I'll watch it. If someone goes through a ladder, I'll give that a shot. I'll probably watch the highlights, right? But as far as I'm concerned, I think I'm going to keep going with this mentality for the foreseeable future, where I look at Sami Zayn matches or segments and Kevin Owens matches or segments, and I just skip them. I just skip them in their entirety. The only exceptions will be like if it's, for example, like, I don't know, let's say it's like The Rock versus Sami Zayn. Obviously, I'm going to watch that. I'll put up with any wrestler to see The Rock wrestle, but you get my point, right? Now we have a dream match. Just kidding. Dominic Mysterio versus Braun Breaker. The match is decent, but it ends as one would expect. Judgment Day attacks Braun. Braun eventually kills Carlito, and as well as Dominic, and then scares away Finn. It's just ridiculous. There is no universe in which Finn Balor has any chance against Braun Breaker, so it's just silly. But, it looks like that's like Finn Balor's thing. Then Finn Balor retreats from the ring and he's like smiling. It's like, why are you smiling? You've lost every match for a year. How about wrestlers act consistent with their win-loss record a little bit? You know what I mean? Like, at the very least, remember Happy Corbin? Before he was Happy Corbin, he was like disheveled, like douchebag Corbin. Right? Or was that like before? I don't know. Whatever. The point is, like disheveled Corbin, who had lost everything, who was broke, this guy was acting like a loser because he was being presented as a loser. Finn Balor is presented as a loser, but acts like a winner, right? Which makes him appear retarded. It's like, you can't be this out of touch with your abilities. You suck ass. Like, Finn Balor is indistinguishable at this point from Akira Tozawa. There is no difference between Finn Balor and Akira Tozawa. Like, if someone told you, like, if you didn't know any better, right, and you watched wrestling for a whole year, right, and someone then told you, like, you didn't know anything about it before, someone told you that Finn Balor was a world champion, you'd be like, what are you talking about? You mean the guy that loses to literally everyone? They'd be like, yeah, and you'd be like, what? That's weird. But anyways, then we move on. Now it's time for the cuckster. Cucky Rhodes comes out, right? And then he starts talking about his boring-ass family. I am tired of Cody Rhodes promoting himself shamelessly. He's like, I have my students at the Monster Factory. Nobody cares. You know what I mean? Nobody gives a flying fuck about those AEW degenerates. Nobody cares at all. But anyways, Cody Rhodes is out there doing his Cody Rhodes thing, right? Then he talks once again about how Dusty Rhodes was broke, right? There comes a point where it's like you have to honor your father a little bit. Stop reminding everybody at every chance you get that Dusty Rhodes was a degenerate loser. You know what I mean? Because that's what he said, I think, right? And he said it many times. He's like, it was sometimes the lights would go off because Dusty overspent on other things. And it's like, dude, like, that's not the same thing as actually struggling. You know what I mean? Having a degenerate father who made a lot of money and spent a lot of money, and then I guess you didn't have electricity. It's not the same thing as not having any money at all, right? So, and at the same time, he like honors Dusty Rhodes, but he also besmirches him with this nonsense. Seth Rollins comes out dressed as Carmen Sandiego, wearing a bright red raincoat, right? This is a new low, right? I say this a lot for Seth Rollins, but this is the lowest of low. He looks like a massive jobber. Like, if someone was debuting like this, you'd be like, oh, they're obviously here to get squashed in 35 seconds. There comes a point, right? There comes a point where enough is enough, all right? I understand that nowadays, the new thing is for men to like basically turn into women and for men to embrace being gay, right? This is the only explanation. Like, for Seth Rollins. There is no straight man that would dress like he dresses. There is no way. It's impossible, right? I don't care how eccentric you are, You're a little gay. And hey, if you're gay, kid. I don't care. It doesn't bother me at all. But the reality is that the reason why otherwise straight men, like let's say Seth Rollins, the reason why they dress this way is because nobody says, hey, that's fucking weird. You know what I mean? Nobody says that anymore, right? That's what we need people to do. I mean, we have a few voices in that community, including your boy, but nobody just stands up and says to them, dude, what are you doing? Like, you look gay, right? And he's going to be like, oh, I'm secure in my masculinity. You have long bleached hair, you wear women's clothes, and you have a girl voice, right? You're basically gay, right? Like, I know he's definitely seen one up close. And that's fine. Embrace it if you want. Don't embrace it if you don't want. That's none of my business. But the implication that I'm supposed to take Seth Rollins seriously as an alpha male when he comes dressed this way is laughable. And I refuse to do it anymore. Soon, this motherfucker might also be added into my ban list, along with Cucky Owens and Sami Zayn. That's it. The hater is now establishing the ban list cuts. That came out of like my head just now. But anyway, Seth Rollins pretty much cuts the same promo he's been cutting forever, which is, I'm going to win the title next time I get a chance. He's been saying the same thing for about 7 years. All Seth Rollins does is he comes out, he has no charisma whatsoever. Seth Rollins' entire thing is, I dress like a woman, so that's what makes me interesting, and I have like a weird theme song that people sing to. Otherwise, he adds absolutely nothing in terms of the presentation of wrestling. I will concede, because the hater is not a real hater, Seth Rollins is excellent in his abilities to put on a good match. There's no doubt about that, right? Like, nobody can say that Seth Rollins is boring, you know? Seth Rollins' matches are always fun. Like, you know, if you compare him to, let's say, like Finn Balor, you know, he's like very, very, very good compared to Finn Balor. All Finn Balor does is like a variety of running kicks. You know what I mean? It's just a guy who does running kicks. Him and Nakamura should just make a tag team called the Kick Boys. You know what I mean? The kickstand, right? Seth Rollins does cool shit. Ain't no doubt about it. But it doesn't matter, right? Because he's still boring. Basically, this segment ends with exactly what I just said. Seth Rollins says, I'm going to win. You know, see you there. He gives Cody some loose advice on not selling his hole to The Rock because, you know, Seth Rollins sold his hole to Triple H. And as a result, Seth Rollins has never let it die down, which is completely inconsistent with anything that we've seen thus far because fundamentally, Dean Ambrose doesn't count anymore. He's not an entity in WWE. So who cares if you betrayed Dean Ambrose, who isn't here anymore? He's not a character in the drama. So, and then Roman Reigns is, you know, technically, I guess, like a tweener now. But let's even say he's a face. It doesn't make a difference because the reality still sticks, right? It doesn't matter if Roman Reigns is a face or a heel. Seth Rollins doesn't like him. So him hitting Roman Reigns with a chair and then him saying Roman Reigns is a bad person is consistent. So why does he feel bad about the chair? He knew all along, apparently, that Roman Reigns was a jerk. So there you have it. Now we have the main event, which is a women's tag team title match, right? This also represents an absolute new low, right? There is no situation in which the women's tag team title match should main event anything, let alone a Raw, right? It should main event even like an NXT. It should main event even like a Velocity. You know what I mean? This is not a title that merits main event status. The hater immediately thought back to a classic match, right, for storyline purposes, of Lita versus Stephanie McMahon for the women's title, right? Main eventing Raw, you know? And JR being like, this is the first time ever that women have main evented Raw, right? And think about what that was. That was like the end of an oppressive reign of Stephanie McMahon, who wasn't a wrestler, you know? And it involved people like Triple H, DX, Lita, who was like an up-and-coming, like, you know, she definitely deserves like the belt type of wrestler. The Hardy Boys, who went on to become living legends. And then also, I think The Rock interfered, or Stone Cold. Someone interfered, right, to help Lita. So it's like, you know what I mean? That's pretty cool. And now we go from that to Raquel Rodriguez wrestling Naomi. You know what I mean? Like, this is completely dumbfounded, right? Now, the match was decent for what it was. I will concede that. And then basically it ends as follows. Naomi gets tagged in. Bianca and Naomi do a double KOD, which adds nothing to the move because it's not like you're adding extra strength. It'd be better if Bianca just did a KOD and Naomi just pushed down the person as they were falling. You know, that would make more sense. Kind of like, remember like the power bomb that the APA would do, where JBL, with Bradshaw, would pick up the guy in a power bomb, and then Farouk would just stand next to him and just push the guy down in this almost like indifferent way, right? Like, we're not going to do this like fancy move. Our move is JBL power bombs this guy, which is already devastating, and then one of the strongest wrestlers on the roster, Farouk, just pushes him down further, right? Doesn't have to be all theatrical. It's just, it doesn't fit their character. But in this case, the move is just stupid. Basically, what happens is after that, Raquel Rodriguez takes out Bianca. Naomi goes for the split-legged moonsault. There's a bunch of Dominic interference, and basically Raquel slams Naomi's head, not on the turnbuckle, but on the post. She falls, and then Liv just covers her and wins. And this is presented as some sort of like, you know, massive like upset in the internet. And it's like, what are you talking about? The tag team champions were Bianca Belair and Naomi. Like, this is literally the career highlight of Naomi in terms of like presentation. I know she's been a women's champion before, but nobody cares. Nobody remembers when, right? And nobody remembers who she beat or who beat her. Nobody cares at all about this. You know, this is like by far the height of Naomi's career. She doesn't deserve it because she left the company high and dry with Sasha Banks. And then Bianca Belair, who might deserve a little bit better. The fact of the matter is, this has been a bullshit year for her. Like, clearly, Triple H doesn't care about her at all. You know what I mean? So there you have it. And then fireworks go off as if someone just won the world title at WrestleMania. When, in fact, someone just won the women's tag team titles for the third time, both of them, on a throwaway episode of Raw, which the hater believes was utter trash. So that being said, take care, motherfuckers.